Yeah, so a lot has happened in terms of the Deshaun Watson situation that we talked about last week on the podcast. Deshaun Watson, as we know, has had a lot of trouble with the ownership in the Texans organization. There's been a lot of assumptions made about why he's mad with the organization. The main reason pretty much he's mad at them is they didn't include him in the GM search, which they ultimately hired Nick Caserio. Now they hired a firm to go find a GM for them, a recommendation basically. Hundreds of thousands of dollars going to this. And they recommended the Steelers' vice president of football operations. They didn't take this, and neither did they take Deshaun Watson's advice when they told him that he was going to be involved in the GM search. They basically ghosted him and ignored everything that Watson had to say. So he was pretty pissed off. He's voiced this on Twitter, and he's left cryptic messages everywhere that his anger is now a 10 instead of a 2, tweets like that. Weird stuff. But ultimately, reports said that Watson just wants out. There's a growing sense in the NFL and front offices throughout that Watson has played his last snap as a Houston Texan. I do believe that he probably has played his last snap as a Houston Texan. It just doesn't make sense that he would want to play there anymore with what's going on with him. And also the Bill O'Brien thing and the DeAndre Hopkins trade back then. It's
been a downward trend.
Disaster. Yeah. He hasn't been happy in a while. And he was very smart. Watson was very smart in signing that extension with the Texans, actually, because he pretty much just locked in his money. Because he's going to get out of Houston. We know he's going to get out of Houston. And he could have did the free agency path, but he locked in his money then so that if he got injured possibly this season, that just happens. He didn't. But it was a good kind of safety net that he put in. I thought that was interesting. Like we looked at the contract last year and we said, why is this guy signing an extension when his top weapon just left and even back then the organization was in turmoil? Why is he signing this extension? Well, he knew that he had the power to possibly force a trade somewhere else while still getting the money. So he got the money, he secured the money, and then now he's going to try to force himself out somewhere. So it's basically the same as free agency at this point because there's no way Deshaun Watson stays with the Texans unless something happens. Richard Sherman also linked him to the Jets. Sherman said that he should go over to New York. He wanted him to go over to New York. Former defensive coordinator for the 49ers and Sherman's coach, Robert Saleh, is now the head coach of the Jets, which I think was a pretty good hire, although I would have liked them to go into offensive direction. But I really like Saleh. I thought Saleh should have got a job last year, probably after the job he did with the Super Bowl, and did a really good job this year the 49ers were probably the most injured team in the NFL this year, and their defense was still top of the line without linebackers like Fred Warner, and they lost to Forrest Buckner to trades and all that. And they just still did really, really well. Anyway, Sherman linked him to the Jets, and now this Jets narrative has really grown into a full-fledged fact at this point that the Jets and Watson are engaged with each other in interest in meeting. Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, apparently, there's also been reports that they've been recruiting Watson to New York. Now, it's kind of weird because these are basketball players recruiting a football player to a football team, but apparently they want to grow
the city's
New York City sports.
Yeah.
Which I respect that to them completely, and I think that the Jets here would do really well with a Deshaun Watson trade, even if they had to give up the number 2 pick. I like Justin Fields, but the Ohio State quarterbacks that have come out of Ohio State haven't done good in the NFL, really ever. Especially in past years, the Urban Meyer and the Ryan Day era. You've had guys like Cardale Jones and JT Barrett, who were late round guys, so you didn't really expect a ton out of them, but they were national championship quarterbacks. Also, you had Braxton Miller, who had to convert to wide receiver. That's another story, but even then he still didn't do well. but that's out of the picture. Dwayne Haskins is the most recent example. He wasn't disciplined, and the problems on the field were super evident with Haskins in there. And now you have Fields coming in, who's probably the most physically gifted and talented players to ever come out of Ohio State as a quarterback and be a highly touted draft prospect. But that Ohio State factor just pushes it even further, and his performance in the national championship is concerning to NFL front offices. And I think taking the risk on either Zach Wilson or Justin Fields with that second pick isn't really worth it for the Jets. I think if the Jets can trade Sam Darnold, their second overall pick, the pick the next year, and the pick the next year, first rounders, and maybe throw a second in there for Deshaun Watson, that's perfect. The Jets already have Jamison Crowder at wide receiver. They got Denzel Mims, who's a good developing wide receiver as well. Braxton Berrios is a good slot receiver. He might not stick around, but he's still a pretty good wide receiver for what they're trying to do over there. And they also got Rashad Perryman, who was on and off, as he always is, but can produce when is needed and is a good deep threat. And for Watson to have that, also you got Mekhi Becton. You already got the blind side covered. Plus, with that Seattle pick that they had this year, if they were to trade away the second pick, they'd probably get another O-lineman there and keep building that up. So their defense is not amazing. It definitely needs some work. But they can do that through free agency, and you're going to attract free agents.
After you sign Watson.
After you get Watson. And the picks that they'd be losing, you already have Seattle's pick this year through the Jamal Adams trade. You have Seattle's pick this year, and you have Seattle's pick next year. So that covers the picks that you'd be losing in this trade for Watson. They're later picks, but they're first-round picks. If you just look at it as first-round pick, it covers it. So you're getting rid of your 2 first-rounders this year and next year, but you're keeping the Seattle picks. So you still have first-round picks to build around and build around Watson. So I think getting Watson here in New York is just a better move. You lose a first-round pick 3 years down the line, but at that point, I don't think you're going to need it at all. So, and you'll still have seconds and all that, and I think that they could manage with that. I think if you're going down this line with the Jets, you want to have a winning franchise by the third year. And also, if you look at it like this, if the Jets get Deshaun Watson, the Patriots have the worst quarterback in the AFC East.
Depending on what they do in free agency.
Depending, but even still, worst quarterback.
What if they get Matthew Stafford?
Or situation. If they got Stafford, I'd put Stafford over Tua in Miami, which is also another destination for Watson.